Let's begin our abolitionist journey not with the question, what do we have now and how can we make it better? Instead, let's ask, what can we imagine for ourselves and the world? If we do that, then boundless possibilities of a more just world await us. Mariam Kaba. Welcome to the Black Studies Open University, the spring event series of the Abolition Democracy Fellows Program of the Black Studies Collaboratory, housed in the Department of African American Studies here at UC Berkeley. Today's program, White Supremacy, Black Trauma, and Liberatory Justice as a Healing Practice, is curated by Abolition Democracy Activist in Residence Kat Brooks, with support from undergraduate research assistant Alecia Harger. And this is the 7th of 9 events in our Black Studies Open University Spring Series. My name is Lee Rayford. I'm a professor of African American Studies, and along with Dr. Tiana Espichel, co-director of the Black Studies Collaboratory. The BSC is a 3-year initiative to explore and amplify the world-building work of Black Studies. We are supported by generous funding from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation's Just Futures Initiative, and you can find out more about our work at our website, blackstudiescollab.berkeley.edu. We are here at the Berkeley Art Museum, at the threshold of the UC Berkeley campus in the city of Berkeley, sited on the territory of the Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the historic and sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community, both town and gown, has and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868. In acknowledging the Ohlone history of this land, we acknowledge that the Ohlone people are thriving members of the Berkeley community who are actively imagining more just futures and engaging the tools that are needed to do that imaginative work. One way to make concrete such acknowledgement is through the payment of Shumi land tax, a material way for non-Indigenous people living in the East Bay to participate in the rematriation of land to Indigenous people. And you can find out more about Shumi through the Sogorea-Te Land Trust. So this series, the Black Studies Open University, is an effort to better understand the history and future of Black life on stolen lands. Today's presentation reminds us that we cannot imagine better, more just futures for ourselves if we do not undo the white supremacist structures that threaten to eviscerate us, eviscerate all of us. And we cannot fight together to heal the traumas that inhibit our freedom dreams unless we come together to heal. So we are led today in this exploration by one of Bay Area's most potent organizers, Kat Brooks. Before I introduce Kat and Alecia, I want to thank the beautiful collective of people who've made today and this series possible. The fantastic staff here at Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive, our BSC project manager extraordinaire, Barbara Montano. I want to thank our graduate student assistants, Francesca Araujo and Alexandra Gassese. I want to thank the Department of African American Studies. I want to thank our ASL interpreters for today, Kat Ridley here to my left, and Alina Duncan from Pro Bono ASL. I want to thank the co-organizers and facilitators of today's event, media consultant Cedric O'Bannon, and BSc undergraduate research assistant to Kat Brooks, the incredible Alecia Harger. I want to thank you all for making the time to join us. I want to thank the ancestors who are with us always. And I want to thank Abolition Democracy Activist in Residence Kat Brooks for bringing all her expertise, her multi-directional talent, and her fire for liberation to so thoughtfully curate today's event. Thank you, Kat, for trusting the BSC this year. Kat Brooks is a longtime performer, playwright, organizer, and activist. Many of you know Kat as host of Law and Disorder on KPFA. Kat has played a central role in the struggle for justice for Oscar Grant and has spent the last decade working with impacted communities and families to rapidly respond to police violence and rapidly transform the ways our communities are policed and incarcerated. Kat is the co-founder of the Anti-Police Terror Project, APTP, and the executive director of the Justice Teams Network. Kat was also the runner-up in Oakland's 2018 mayoral election, facing incumbent Libby Schaaf. I also want to introduce Alecia Harger. I seem to have lost my notes on Alecia, so I'm just going to do this on the fly. I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Alecia for 2 years as undergraduate research assistant in the BSC. Alecia is an activist, also an organizer, a model, a brilliant thinker, and is a visionary, and it has really been a joy to work with you and to know you these last 2 years. So this program will end promptly at 2:30 p.m. And we'll need to vacate the theater right after. And we invite folks to continue the conversation in the atrium, but also there will be special healing spaces available as well in the what used to be the cafe upstairs, and Alecia will tell you more about that. So thank you for being here, and thank you for joining us on this journey.
Hello, everyone. Hi. My name is Alecia Harger. As Professor Rayford said, I'm a student at UC Berkeley in the African American Studies Department. And for the last semester and a half, I've had the absolute joy and privilege of working with Kat Brooks, a woman that I have admired since I was just a budding abolitionist in high school. I am so deeply honored and grateful to share this space with everyone, and so thankful that y'all came out to share your time and energy with us. I'd like to start with some logistical notes. We are very thankful and appreciative for everyone who's wearing a mask. Kat and I are not wearing a mask while we're on stage, and so we appreciate everybody who's doing that to protect us and protect our community. If you'd like to grab a mask, there are extras in the entryway. And also Barbara's holding up her hand. She has masks over there. We'd also like for anybody who knows that they're going to be leaving early to just move to the edge of the row so that you're not like scooching past people and disrupting their viewing experience while you leave. And that's about it. Oh yeah. And we have our paper, which is in the works, but there are excerpts for you that are available in a little packet. And you can also get a printout of the script that Kat is working from today. Now that we're done with the logistical stuff, I can really get into things. Kat is the co-founder of the Anti-Police Terror Project, an Oakland-based Black-led coalition that seeks to create a sustainable model to eradicate police terror in communities of color. I could opine about their programs endlessly for the full 2 hours, but for the sake of time, I encourage you to scan that QR code and go to their website to learn more about their work. Now to today's presentation. This presentation seeks to highlight the deranging reality of the anti-Black history and present of the United States in order to elucidate the intense cognitive dissonance and emotional repression needed to maintain even a facade of civility under unthinkably violent conditions. This means that this presentation will be upsetting. We'll be talking about state violence, the violence of slavery, and there will be mentions of sexual violence against Black women. There will be recreations and depictions of intense, deadly police violence. I don't want people to walk away from this presentation thinking that we presented this upsetting content to no end. We're just at the beginning of our journey exploring the necessarily political nature of Black psychology. We're investigating what it means to have individual personhood in a system and society that brutalizes us as fungible items. And most importantly, we're seeking to understand what it means to heal when justice and equity remain elusive. We're seeking to understand how Black people can sustainably organize without losing our minds. Or maybe, while we lose our minds and work to rebuild them together. I'd like to start by sharing a poem that I think embodies some of the ethos of this presentation. June Jordan captured righteous, maddening anger like no one else, and so I would like to share Poem About Police Violence by June Jordan. Tell me something. What do you think would happen if every time they kill a Black boy, then we kill a cop? Every time they kill a Black man, then we kill a cop. You think the accident rate would lower subsequently? Sometimes the feeling like "amaze me, baby" comes back to my mouth and I am quiet, like Olympian pools from the running the mountainous snows under the sun. Sometimes thinking about the 12th house of the cosmos, or the way your ear ensnares the tip of my tongue, or signs that I have never seen, like danger, women working. I lose consciousness of ugly, bestial, rabid, and repetitive affront as when they tell me 18 cops in order to subdue one man. 18 cops strangled him to death in the ensuing scuffle. And don't you idolize the diction of the powerful subdue and scuffle? My, oh my. And that the killing of Arthur Miller on the Brooklyn street was just a justifiable accident again. People have been having accidents all over the globe so long like that I reckon that the only suitable insurance is a gun. I'm saying war is not to understand or rerun. War is to be fought and won. Sometimes the feeling like "amaze me, baby" blots it out, the bestial, but not too often. So tell me something. What do you think would happen if every time they killed a Black boy, then we killed a cop? Every time they kill a Black man, then we kill a cop. You think the accident rate would lower subsequently? If things get too intense and you need a break from this presentation, please feel free to get up and engage one of the healing justice practitioners that we have at our disposal today. And thank you to you guys. They're sitting in this upper corner if y'all want to raise your hands so we can see you. A round of applause, thank you. If you're unable to ascend those stairs, you can go out the door into the elevator up to the cafe floor and they will be there. We have massage tables, we've got some healing herbs, we've got what we need to bring us back into our bodies if things get too intense. These healers will be prioritizing Black people and people of color, so do keep that in mind. We also have agua de Florida, or Florida water, in mason jars across the space in order to capture some of the energy that will be in the room today. Even when things hurt, even when it gets overwhelming, we're in this together. Next, Kat is going to share with us an excerpt of her one-woman play entitled Tasha, about the murder of Natasha McKenna at the Fairfax County Jail in 2015. Before we launch into this performance, which will be upsetting, I'd like for us to engage in the simplest of healing justice exercises, collective breath. So if everybody can take a second, feel your feet on the floor, close your eyes if you're comfortable or if you wish, and breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. All right, without further ado, this is Kat Brooks performing an excerpt of her full-length one-woman play, Tasha.
The Commonwealth Attorney announced that he will not be seeking criminal charges regarding the in-custody death of Natasha McKenna. I want all of you to know this tragic incident has been ingrained in my mind from the day that it occurred. It's my responsibility as your sheriff to ensure that something like this never happens again. I also want to express my condolences to Ms. McKenna's family for their loss and give them the opportunity to view the video which you are about to see. This video has been pixelated out of respect for Ms. McKenna's privacy. Since February 3rd of this year, there have been numerous media reports about what allegedly occurred. There is no better way for me to share what actually occurred than to make this video available for the community to view in its entirety. Now that the criminal investigation has concluded, the Sheriff's Office will conduct a thorough internal affairs investigation of this incident, including the review and revision of our policies and procedures. We will also continue training our staff using the nationally recognized model of crisis intervention team training. The Fairfax County Adult Detention Center is the default housing for those suffering from mental illness. The Sheriff's Office will continue our effort to implement a jail diversion program where those suffering from mental illness will be able to get the treatment that they so desperately need and deserve. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tasha. Well, really, it's Natasha, but I don't like the N-A. N-A spells nah. You know, like the song, na 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 na, na 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 na, hey hey hey. Goodbye. It's like saying no before your name, and who wants something negative before their name? We got enough negativity in the world without conjuring it up every time somebody say your name. Nope. No, thank you. I'll stick with Tasha, if you please. I've been waiting for you. Feels like forever, but I don't really think it's been that long. It's just so quiet here and dark. Not like scary dark, just dark and lots of space. I've been waiting for you. Well, y'all is what has to happen next. Well, don't no story get told if there ain't no one there to hear it. There was this kid in Oakland, California, and one night, him and his friends was riding the train home one night after a New Year's Eve party. Something popped off on the train, and the pigs got called. And when the pigs got there, they started fucking with the kid and his friends, and eventually they yanked him off the train, slammed him on the back, handcuffed him, and shot him in the back while he was handcuffed. Now the people standing around there, they got it all on their phones, and pretty soon that video was all over social media. I couldn't stop watching that video. Couldn't stop crying. I was sick to my stomach. Something shifted in me that day. It was like my enough button got pushed. I have had fucking enough. He wasn't the first black boy to be killed by police, and Lord knows he wasn't gonna be the last. But you know what? Oakland, it caught fire. They was in them streets, breaking windows, smashing cop cars, stopping traffic. I could feel the rage all the way from here. I almost got on a plane to join them. I wanted to do something. They always come in as though they lame-ass excuses, though they thought he had a gun or he was reaching for something or she was so out of control that they feared for their lives, and they get away with it every goddamn time. No, never happens to them. There's this one pig somewhere on the West Coast. He done killed 4 people in 4 years, and he's still on the goddamn job. How's that happen, huh? How's that work? How they get to just keep coming back to work like nothing ever happened, and we're supposed to push forward with no closure and no justice? They got a little piece of justice for that kid in Oakland, though. That cop got convicted of oh yeah, involuntary manslaughter. Can you tell me what's involuntary about handcuffing somebody and shooting them in the back? And the only reason why they got that is because they were afraid them people was gonna burn all that shit to the ground. We need more of that. I need more of that. Because as long as these motherfuckers think they can keep on killing us and getting away with it, that's exactly what the fuck they gonna do. Miss Mary Mac, all dressed in something with down her. What? But we're not done yet. We playing. Me and Josephine. She right here. She's right here. I don't know why my mama keep leaving me with you. You dumb as a doorknob and blind too. I am not crazy. You crazy and blind. Shut up. Shut up! 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 Make it stop! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! She was about 14. First time I noticed something was off about her. She used to get real moody, didn't want me bothered with nobody. I thought at first she was coming into the puberty, but then I catch her in the toilet or her bedroom just talking. Wasn't nobody else there. Other times she'd get to screaming at nothing and nobody, beating on herself and breaking things. I tried everything I could to help my baby. I used to take her to the church and have them pray over her, wash her in the holy water. I even went one time to one of them spirit women. You know, you give them a couple of dollars and they tell you what herbs to buy and you sprinkle it around your house and pray to some God I ain't never heard of. But nothing helped her. Nothing. And sometimes it would get so bad. This one time I come home from work and all the lights in the house was off. The house was real still. Well, I knew she was home because her book bag was there on the kitchen table. Tasha, where you at, gal? I walked down the hallway to her room just irritated with myself. What if she hurt herself? And I heard it coming from her bedroom closet. I opened the door and there she was, naked as a jaybird. And she was shaking so hard I thought she would break. Tasha, baby, what's wrong? She say, they coming to kill me, mama. They coming to kill me, mama. Mama, help me. They gonna kill me. Shut the door, mama. Don't let them find me, mama. Help me, please. I scooped her up in my arms and I held her and I rocked her. Just like I used to when she was little. Okay, baby, I got you. It's okay. Come on now, come on. It's okay, baby.
Brown baby,
Mommy.
brown baby, as you grow up.
I always knew I was different. I felt different, like in my bones. Different. Other kids had imaginary friends, but my friends was real. I kept trying to tell my mama. When I was little, she would laugh. She thought it was cute, I guess. But as I got older, I think it scared her. And sometimes she'd get real mad. My poor mama. I feel bad for all the stress I caused her. It wasn't my intention, it was just me. And Josephine trouble. Always has been trouble. Like that time she kicked Jimmy Smith in the shin. She say, he got the devil in him. Or that time she stole the clothes from that store downtown. Josephine liked to look nice. I have to look nice. Well, she stole them, but I got in trouble for it. I'm always the one in trouble for it. This is the first time I got in trouble with the police, though. They caught me about a block down the street from the store. I kept trying to tell them it wasn't me. It wasn't me, but then they say, well, what you doing with them bags then, gal? I couldn't say nothing. I seen the bags. I'm not crazy. I just couldn't tell it right. I couldn't explain how when Josephine here, I'm over there somewhere. I just couldn't tell it right. Well, after that, I took her to the doctor, and he told me that she had schizophrenia. Schizophrenia? What's that? What does that mean? And how do we fix it? That's what I wanted to know. How was we gonna fix my baby? But wasn't no fixing to be done. Wasn't no help neither. This is 1982. Wasn't no organizations or nothing. It was just me and Tasha. Small towns is funny, you know. Hard to keep a secret. And somehow that information that was supposed to be a secret between me and my baby, somehow that get whispered from one end of town to the next. They treated us both like we was contagious after that, like they could catch crazy just by looking at us. I was stuck somewhere between them, being so glad I knew what was going on with her, and just wrecked that this was her life, our life. Kept going over my pregnancy in my mind, what I eat, what I drink. Did I sleep on my stomach too long? There has to be a reason. Things like this don't just happen. We are good Christians. We don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't steal. We do everything the Bible says we're supposed to do. So why was this happening to my baby? Why was this happening to me? She couldn't be left alone no more after that. And then there was the medication. We used to go round and round about that medication. Things she would do to avoid taking them pills. Put it under her tongue and pretend to swallow. Say she go to bed early and pretend to sleep so as not to have to take her evening dose. Take the pill, then throw it up so we got to start the whole process all over again. There was this one time, she hadn't been on her meds for a while, and I got a call from Miss Parker. Miss McKenna, it's Miss Parker. The police is fighting Tasha in the street, and she naked, Miss McKenna, she naked. They beating on her like she a grown man. I keep telling them, you ain't gotta do her like that. She's just not right in the head is all. But they ain't listening to me. You need to come home. Well, ain't nobody helping her. Ain't nobody know what to do. They just standing around watching the police fight. You ain't got to do her like that. She's just crazy is all. Oh, Miss McKenna, they really hurting her now. When she was younger, and I used to call the police for help, they was nicer about it. Felt sorry for me, I guess. But as she got older, they changed. Got more rough with her. Bad enough she was black. But black and crazy in Virginia, that was a problem. Tasha changed too. That beating they gave her changed her. Every time she saw the police, she was ready to fight. My Tasha ain't nothing if she ain't a fighter. She give them a run for their money every time.
We've got some new disturbing information about the woman who died this week after being tasered by the sheriff's deputies in the Fairfax County Jail. Peggy Fox joins us now from the jail with some new details about what she's learned. Let's have at it.
Natasha McKenna died of a heart attack after being tased not once, but 4 times in the Fairfax County Jail. Her family tells me she was a small woman, only about 120 pounds, and they can't understand why 5 deputies reacted to her resistance with such force.
Another one. These motherfuckers done killed another one. Natasha McKenna. It's 2015 and we still dealing with this shit? When it gonna stop, huh? When it gonna end? When are we gonna mean it when we say no more business as usual? Because it sure as fuck looks like business as usual to me. They keep killing us and we keep protesting. How mad we have to get. The pigs killed over 1,000 people last year, and guess how many of them pigs got charged? Guess! 12. 12 out of 1,200, and that's charged, you know, not convicted. I don't know what's wrong with us. Niggas running around, smoking blunts and chasing pussy like we ain't got targets on our back. That's shit. Niggas used to having targets on our backs. First, the slave catcher put a target on our back. Then it was the Klan. Then it was the police. And eventually, it was other niggas. Maybe we too broken to get mad enough. Maybe all that breaking they done over all these years done broke us for good, because I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why we ain't burning all this shit to the ground from one coast to the next, or at the very least, hightailing up out of here as fast as we can, because this shit is exhausting. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Sheriff Stacy Kincaid. I am here to inform you that tragically on February 8th, 2015 at 8:35 p.m., Natasha McKenna did in fact die in the Fairfax County Jail. I'm the first woman sheriff elected in this county, and I have a job to do, a job I'm elected to do. I keep people safe. Black, white, don't matter. I keep people safe. I'm not a racist. We are not racist. We were just doing our job. She was out of control. You saw the video. My sheriffs did what they needed to do to contain the situation. That is, after all, our jobs is to contain the situations. She shouldn't have been here in the first place. We are police, not social workers. But now is not the time to play the blame game. Now is the time to move forward and ensure that this never happens again. Questions? Hi, I come to buy a car. I like red cars. You like red cars? Red cars look so pretty, like cherries dancing along the freeway. I come to buy a car. Yeah, I got money. No, I'm not lying. I don't lie, I don't cheat, I don't steal. My mama teach me that good. What are you doing? Get away from me. Police, help! Help! I come here to buy a car and he... Tasha, I come to buy a car and he... Natasha. Natasha McKenna. Warrant? What do you mean warrant? I ain't got no warrant. Let me go! Let me go! I just come to buy a car! Mama! Mama, help me! Mama, they're trying to kill me again! Mama, help me,
Ready? Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
Oh.
You're going to stay in the chair. We're going to go all the way to the back. You in there? You in there? All the way to the back. Hold on. Hold on, guys.
I'm gonna be that name.
Now pull away. Now pull away. Pull it to the back of the chair.
That key don't come. It will be done.
Is it? Pull it to the back of the chair. Stop. Listen. Don't trust me. Don't care. So you're all good. Pull it to the back. Stop kicking. Let us put on the chair. Please. Hold it back and how
Trespasses.
Yeah. Stop resisting. I'm going to Somebody pick up the rope. I might have to get some slack here. Okay. Why? What? You can't get down there. Get some slack. I need a handcuff key. Man, stop it. You understand? Handcuff key, please. Somebody's coming.
Dylan, I got it. Here. I got one. Got it.
All right, slack.
Slack.
I go by the shoulders. Right by the shoulders.
That is the key to... You all hear that buzzing?
Brown baby, brown baby. As you
That performance was in memory of Natasha McKenna. It's also in memory of the countless people that we have lost to police violence. These are 4 people who were murdered by police in the greater Bay Area. And there are so many people whose names we don't even have time to recite. I want us all to take a moment and breathe together again. And we're going to do a little exercise that I'm borrowing from the Church of Black Feminist Thought. So once again, feel your feet on the floor. Close your eyes if you want. And start rubbing your hands together. Rub your hands together until you build up some heat. And then you can put that heat on your heart, or your stomach, or your neck, or anywhere that needs the heat and the energy right now. And feel free to keep doing that while I share with you one of my favorite poems of all time, Won't You Celebrate With Me by Lucille Clifton. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up. Here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand, come and celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. I'm gonna run that back. Come and celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Every day something has tried to kill us and has failed. And so for Black people, every day that we wake up, every moment that we smile, every minute that we cry, every laugh that we share, every time that we dance is an absolute fucking triumph. And just because it is an entirely necessary triumph does not make it any less of a triumph. And next we have an interview between Kat Brooks and Malkia Devich-Cyril. And there is a little typo on this slide because it should say Devich-Cyril. That is their full name.
I've always had an awareness that to stand up for justice ran the risk of extraordinary loss. So the relationship between loss and change has always been kind of central in my life. But more than that, you know, my mom was suffered from sickle cell anemia, which is a genetic disease which is most often fatal. And it's something you have your whole life. And so I was aware of that, you know, my entire life, that my mother was going to die at any time, you know. It's a degenerative disease, but it can kill you at any time. So I grew up thinking that I would lose my mother at any time. And so loss was a feature in my life. It wasn't something that I suddenly realized it wasn't something I suddenly realized was something inevitable. It wasn't something that I had at one single moment, you know what I mean, where it became more present for me. It was just, I was a fish and that was the water, you know? So for me, there is, trauma is inherent in oppression, you know? Oppression is designed to shock the system. It's designed to take complete control over your sovereignty and your agency. It's designed to extract from you what it can. And trauma is a tool to that end, you know? Grief, however, is different. You know, grief is a response to loss, any response to loss, which means it can cover a vast number of emotions, including joy. So let's put that aside for now. You know, the fact that trauma is a feature of racial oppression is something that I think every Black person walks with in America and all over the world, actually. So for most people, when we think about trauma, we think about, you know, you had a car accident, this incident, you know, that happened to you that you then spend the rest of your life trying to get over, you know, child sexual abuse, trauma, right? Rape, trauma, physical abuse, trauma. But what we don't think about is the kind of collective punishment that oppression is, and that it brings to us a collective trauma, not just a collective trauma, but a historic trauma, a generational trauma, which means that at some point it ceases to be almost a trauma, right? It's no longer simply a shock to the system. It is the system. It's the way we live. It rearranges how we think. It rearranges our DNA, and it rearranges how we engage culturally. So that's some of what I think that the devastating nature is of racial trauma, is that it ceases to be an incident. It ceases to be identifiable because it is woven into every single interaction, every single moment of your life. Yes, I believe grief is part of our response to racialized trauma. So this is how I think it relates, these two phenomena relate to one another. I think that trauma shocks the system and removes sovereignty and agency. That's part of its purpose, or erodes sovereignty and agency. I think grief actually gives it back. So grief is an inevitable part of life. Every moment that we are alive, we're losing something. And that's natural. We're supposed to lose things. Nobody gets out of life alive. Trauma is not natural. Trauma is the result of harm. Trauma is it's in fact the reason that it's trauma is because it's unnatural. It's an unnatural direction that your life has taken. It is an unnatural interruption into your idea of safety, right? Grief is natural, trauma is not. Now the reason, how they are related to each other in terms of white supremacy and racism is that death isn't simply a consequence of trauma, it's also a cause. Let me say that a different way. Black people die more than almost anybody else except for Native Americans. We die younger, we die more frequently, we die more violently. That fact, the disproportionate dying of Black people, is its own source of trauma. It is in fact a trauma. And it is a consequence of white supremacy, but it is also a cause of racial disadvantage. When you experience death young, when you experience multiple deaths over and over and over again, when you experience multiple violent deaths, as I have, it changes you. It changes your capacity. It and when it happens to you as a group, when it happens to you like what the world has now seen with the pandemic, it changes your ability to participate in a democracy. It can, depending on how it's metabolized, it can create extraordinary alienation. It can create extraordinary apathy. So what I'm saying is grief is natural, but trauma defiles grief. Do you see what I'm saying? Trauma defiles grief, and under white supremacy, both are deformed, right? People are deformed. Grief is deformed under white supremacy. Grief itself is natural, but grief under white supremacy is not. In a collective, when a group of people have had their right to move, their right to be violated in a systemic way, as in the transatlantic slave trade, it transforms, I believe, how we as Black people understand our relationship to democracy, what right we have to land, what right we have to anything. Do we have any rights at all? And are we able to and willing to fight for them? I think that trauma and violation that robs you of agency, robs you of your ability to say yes or no, it doesn't take it for one moment, it takes it for all moments. And then for the rest of your life and for generations after, you are fighting to get that back. It is a robbery that continues. And in this economy, this structure of racial capitalism, it is constantly extracting from Black people and from Black communities, which means the trauma is ongoing. The trauma is ongoing, the violation is ongoing, and so the ability to fight, to try to reclaim the sovereignty, the fight to reclaim sovereignty is also ongoing. So recently, my sister and I were able to get hold of my mother's FBI record. And the record is the short version of the record, and it's 195 pages. And what you see consistently throughout that record is the desire and willingness of the FBI to exploit my mother's illness. So, they went to her college. This is at the time, 1969. She was about 24, 22, something like that. And they went to her college. They went to find out why she was no longer, she couldn't continue to attend. And one of the big reasons was because she was ill. She was ill often. And so they used that throughout the length of my mom's tenure in the Black Panther Party to create tension between her and other members of the party. For example, there's one portion that reads that she was, my mom was always constantly being expelled from the party for arguments with leadership. That's mommy, But at one point, what the record reads is that she was being expelled repeatedly because she was too sick. She was too sick to work. But what it says is two things. One is that she has no visible means of employment, and that she was on welfare because she was too sick to work, that she couldn't finish, she couldn't do the breakfast program the way that they wanted her to because she was too sick to work, that she was getting in arguments with other leaders because she was too sick to work. Now, what you read throughout, though, these are all snitches, right? These are the voices of snitches. This is not like facts. And what they say is consistently contradicted by other facts in the record. Basically, what it appears is that it's the snitches that are saying she's too sick to work. Do you see what I'm saying? It's the snitches that are saying she's too sick to work and planting that seed in everyone's mind. And so the narrative becomes she's too sick to work. So this is, and it's written in there that we should exploit this. She's having arguments with this person. We should exploit the fact that she's ill. It says it in the record. When we talk about grief, when I talk about grief, I'm talking about grief as any and all responses to loss. That means that people who take up various forms of addiction in response to loss, that is grief, people who, as we play the dozens, and Black people are the funniest people on the planet, in my opinion. And part of the reason is because we are engaging our grief to navigate our trauma. That's why we using humor, to navigate trauma. That's grief. That's why grief is so powerful. Grief isn't just, I'm sitting around sad, Grief is about, actually, it's a power, it's a superpower, in my opinion, the ability to intake and to manage and to engage with all of what Black people have to engage with every day and turn it around and make it something livable. That's grief. That's grief. And it's, to me, one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Now, of course, we pay a price. Grief unmetabolized, grief that has nowhere to go, that kind of grief, that there's a cost. The kinds of chronic health issues that Black people, me, I have diabetes, I have high blood pressure, I am overweight, and I understand these to be chronic conditions that are the direct result of generations of oppression. I understand that. And so when we think about health and wellness, it's not about, oh, let me go get a fad diet, let me lose some weight, oh, let me get a massage, let me get in the hot tub, although I do go to the hot tub every week. It's about let me change the conditions so that my body can thrive, so that my body can rest, so that my body can heal. That's why organizing, to me, is a grief response. Organizing is the way we heal. We think about healing as some distant, we're gonna heal and then we're gonna get somewhere and we're gonna be healed. That's not accurate. We're gonna organize, and through our organizing, the healing is going to come. That's how we get back our agency. That's how we reclaim our sovereignty, through collective action. Collective action is a form of grieving. That's what it is. And so I think that while yes, speak on his own. Mm-hmm. So while, of course, we do pay a cost, and the cost is high. In fact, the cost is so high that our grief interrupted results in early death. My mother died when she was 59. My auntie died when she was 58. You know what I'm saying? I have a long list of loved ones who've all died before the age of 60. My wife died at 42. We have a long list, of people that we have lost. And yet, what I can say is that though the cost is very real and the price of living under white supremacy is very high, I can say this, that Black people are magical. And the way that we do healing, heals the whole world. That's the thing. Black power, I believe this, is for everybody. Black power doesn't just heal Black communities. In fact, because you have a nation that's been organized around anti-Blackness, right? Deliberately around anti-Blackness, when you reverse that, when you heal that wound, you heal it for everybody. When you heal the world of anti-Blackness, you heal it for Native Americans, you heal it for the Asians, you heal it for Latinos. We heal it for everybody, for the Muslims and the Arabs. Everybody benefits, for the women, for the trans people, the queer people. Everybody. When we passed affirmative action, white women benefited from that more than anybody. You know what I mean? Every time we win, every time we heal the nation, everybody else wins too. So that's the thing. It's not just about We're not just healing Black communities to heal Black communities. We heal Black communities to heal the world. The revolution will heal. Like, this isn't about getting some body work done. And it's not about just getting some rest. It's about changing the way we think about how we live. You see what I'm saying? So I don't even use the terminology so much, healing justice, although I am deeply indebted to and in awe of those who came up with that language, you know? I am in pursuit of transformative organizing, a whole new model, a way of organizing that cares as much for the individual as it does the collective, that doesn't supersede the individual, a model that doesn't deny the strength and wellness and beauty of the individual while also giving credence to the group and what the collective needs. This is the dance. This is the relationship that Marx had us confused, right? Marx, I'm a Marxist, but Marx was about the group only. The individual is subsumed under the needs of the collective, right? Gramsci, you know, a dedicated Marxist, but who believed in the power of culture, right? Who said it's not just gonna be some materialist transformation. You don't just change because of oppression. You change because because there's a culture, because there's a vision, you know, for what the future might hold. And so for Gramsci said the individual is important too, right? It's not just the group, the individual is important. And our poets, Audre Lorde, and our poets, Barbara Smith, and our writers, James Baldwin, they all helped us understand that there's a relationship between the Black individual and the Black community. Now, when we understand that relationship, we begin to transform how we organize. We bring back the songs. We bring back the food, we bring back organizing in the kitchen. We bring back dancing in the street. We bring back this idea that the Western models of organization that have one ED, one leader that sits at the top on the throne is not actually the way we as Black people in a collective understand change to happen. We organize by relationship. We organize by, I don't even know the right language to use, but I think what I'm trying to say is that the model for transformation that we are often up against is a hierarchical Western model. And in that hierarchical Western model of transformation, you must work till you drop. It is embedded inside of capitalism. You end capitalism by being a capitalist, right? In that model, that's how it works. But that's not how we work. That's not how I want to work. How I want to work is I want to bring about the kind of change that changes me as I do it.
Y'all give it up one time from our kid, Devitt Cyril. And you can learn more about their work, Radical Loss Project. They are a brilliant communicator, organizer, and a lover of our people. And I was so grateful to be in conversation with them. And now we're gonna be in conversation with you. We've spent our time in the Collaboratory exploring the ways in which trauma inhibits Black organizing and liberatory practice. I'll just say I've been an organizer my whole adult life. I'm getting older. I'm not an elder yet, but I am definitely an older head in the movement, and I am very focused on how we win, right? Not just reacting to our trauma, not just reacting to oppression, not just reacting to state terror, but how we interrupt it. And that's really how this conversation came about for me internally and for us as an organization. Alecia and I together are proposing that if Black folks actively sat in our trauma, both historical and present day, as well as the myriad of ways that state terror impacts our daily lives, we would either be engaged in regular acts of violence against white people or be unable to function inside of the United States race-based capitalist paradigm. And so as a result, Black folks have become experts in disassociation, cognitive dissonance, and compartmentalization, and the vast majority of us are walking through life with some level of post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a photo of my daddy. This is Leonard Polk Jr. Sorry. We started with him because as we were engaged in this process, I realized that my daddy is my first and closest example to the ways in which white supremacy infects our lives, and of course then how that infection gets passed down generation to generation to generation. There's more about him in the very beginning of your paper, but essentially he was born into the violence of the South. His mama took him when he was 2 months old to flee that and landed in the violence of the racist and segregated desert known as Las Vegas, Nevada, where he was hunted by police for sport. 86 to Nevada means, in Las Vegas means 8 miles out and 6 feet deep, and that's where they took niggas that didn't know their place. He was shipped off to war and trained to be a killer at the age of 16. Uncle Sam dropped him on the front lines of the Vietnam War when he was 18, where he was shot 6 times at once, shipped back to an attic with full-blown PTSD, and dared to make it if he could. Most of my life, the underlying energy in every engagement, anytime I was in my daddy's presence, and I remember this palpably from being a young girl, was that of an energy of homicidal rage, just waiting. And sometimes it didn't wait, and sometimes I saw it when it didn't wait. More trauma, yeah? That rage, though, was coupled simultaneously with a current of deep, deep love for me that was constantly trying to claw its way through his trauma to be expressed in a healthy way.
The lifetime prevalence for PTSD is highest among Black people out of any racial or ethnic group. That's 8.7% for Black people as compared to 7.4% for white people. Black people are more likely to develop PTSD after a traumatic event and are less likely to seek treatment. And because Black people have less access to mental health care, we can guess that the real numbers are much, much higher. PTSD can be classed into 2 main subtypes, simple PTSD and complex PTSD. Simple PTSD arises from a singular traumatic event like a car crash. Complex PTSD arises from a series of traumatic events. They're both very hard to treat, but what we know for sure is that it is nearly impossible to cure PTSD from a trauma that is ongoing. And there are various names for race-based PTSD. People say racial trauma or epigenetic trauma or post-traumatic slave syndrome. But regardless of the title that you affix to it, white supremacy creates unceasing trauma in Black life that lives in our bodies and our minds and our spirits and can lead to unlawful or violent behavior that then gives the state justification to funnel us into institutions and prisons and graves, and that in turn causes more trauma.
And it's not just our day-to-day lived existence that triggers and traumatizes. The day-to-day is compounded by the generational trauma that I mentioned earlier that we literally carry in our DNA. Generational trauma that requires constant energy to repress. Generational trauma that starts for us, North American Africans, as we traverse the largest graveyard in the world. Imagine for a moment that this is in your DNA. You are kidnapped from your home by people with translucent skin, thrown into the mouth of a mountain with other Africans. Some you knew, most you didn't. Languages you understood, most you did not. Maybe you had your children, often you did not. Stripped of your clothing, chained at wrist and feet. Thrown into the bowels of a foul-smelling, hot, humid, moving house where you were not allowed to move, where you were to eat, shit, piss, and sleep. Maybe your captors threw water on you to wash off the filth. Mostly they did not. If you survived transversing this largest graveyard, underwater graveyard in the world, you arrived at a foreign place with more foreign people. Every inch and orifice of your body searched, placed on display, where you were groped and prodded and investigated for your fitness, taken to a home where, if you were lucky, you were placed inside the house to be beaten and raped while you cooked and cleaned, women and men, beaten and raped. If you were not so lucky, to the field with you, where you would pick cotton until your hands bled and your back screamed. Here you try to form some semblance of home. You find a partner, you have children, and one day, as you are in the field with your child on your back, the overseer comes and rips her off of you. As you scream and wail and pull your hair, you are beaten mercilessly, helpless, as you watch your baby, your flesh, your blood be carried away, knowing you will never see them again. As Black people, we don't sit in that. We don't think about it. If we actually sat with what has been done to us by white people, the actual impact of colonial terror and chattel slavery and ghettoization and mass incarceration, I say again, we could not function.
And whether you use the language of the wake, Christina Sharp, or the afterlife of slavery, the slave ship transcends time. It problematizes and contradicts the stark delineation between then and now, between past and present. And that's why when Horton Spillers was writing about the historical and ontological function of the slave ship, she found that the language of the historian was not telling her what she needed to know. The afterlife of slavery lives on through the peculiar institutions, Jim Crow, ghettoization, hyper-ghettoization, and prisons and jails, but it also lives on in the bodies and minds and spirits of every Black person in America. Spillers states that the slave trade was an ungendering and dehumanizing process. And I know that some people in Black studies do not feel connected to the term humanity, but I would argue that for the average Black person who is not in the academy, humanity is important. It is important to us. And so to know your own humanity while in the midst of abject suffering and dehumanization is absolutely, completely, and totally maddening. And regardless of if enslaved people demonstrated this derangement, white people categorized slaves as already mad, already subrational, and already violent. Slave owners pathologized Black people and believed that Black psychology and Black physiology was distinct from that of white people. While they believed that Black people could be afflicted by psychological disorders, they thought that Black people were too simple-minded to have something that the white person has, like depression. They created diseases that were specific to Black people. One of particular interest is drapetomania, which slave owners believed was a disease that caused enslaved people to attempt to escape slavery. Black resistance has always been pathologized, and as I will soon describe, this pathologization continued well into the 20th century. Toni Morrison posited that for an enslaved woman, someone experiencing the most encompassing form of subjection, madness could be a tenuous refuge from the reason that drives white supremacy. And with this in mind, we have to have radical kindness and compassion and empathy and understanding for everyone whose mind is marked by madness. Whether that madness is internal or external, visible or invisible, languid or violent, we must understand that madness is not weakness, but is a natural reaction to the unceasing violence and suppression and repression of white supremacy.
And just because we don't allow the trauma to rise to the surface doesn't mean it's not there. We live with it every day. We push it down, place it in a box, hide it. That is a mandatory task if we are going to wake up in the morning and take the kids to school or go to work or sometimes simply make a cup of coffee. If we didn't push it down, we just might go crazy, as Tasha says later in my play. At least that is what the white people in systems of white supremacy would say is happening if black folks were too traumatized to move, or started hunting our hunters, or decided one day that we are no longer going to participate in a system or with people who for centuries have done nothing but brutalize us. The reality is that we are collectively and necessarily insane to participate in our own oppression and demise. It is group cognitive dissonance until we can't, until the trauma explodes as intimate partner violence, intercommunal violence, in broad daylight screaming on a corner at demons only you can see but have been haunting you for as long as you can remember, in ways that require numbing so we reach for the things that they, the state, have made sure are readily available to us, drugs and alcohol. And then, when we respond to the conditions that they've created, they then stigmatize, criminalize, and punish us for it. Through cages and graves. Gaslighting at its finest.
In the early 20th century, schizophrenia was primarily associated with white people, and particularly white housewives, and was considered a generally harmless disease. This changed in 1968 with the second edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, otherwise known as the DSM. This edition created new diagnostic criteria for a new subtype of schizophrenia that was defined by paranoid violent belligerence. Articles were written stating that black people, and particularly black men, could have schizophrenia, and that black schizophrenia was markedly more violent and more dangerous than white schizophrenia. This change happened in the midst of a huge amount of deinstitutionalization from mental facilities. However, unsurprisingly, black people were largely exempt from this deinstitutionalization. As this deinstitutionalization occurred, the demographics of mental hospitals became increasingly schizophrenic and increasingly black. This also coincided with the increasing fervor of the civil rights movement, and we saw the inception of the idea of protest psychosis. Protest psychosis was defined by delusional and violent anti-whiteness brought on by listening to the radical words from someone like Malcolm X. Living in the legacy of drapetomania, protest psychosis continued the pathologization of black resistance. And up until the present day, black people are disproportionately diagnosed with schizophrenia at 3 to 5 times the rate of white people, and underdiagnosed with other mental health conditions like depression. And if we recall, it was slave owners telling us then that black people were too simple-minded for depression, and it is psychiatrists telling us now the same thing. So we have to understand that when we tell a hurting, traumatized black person to simply go to therapy, we have to understand that entangling oneself in the mental health system as a black person, a system that is all too often carceral and all too often violent, it is not without risk.
We see the criminalization and stigmatization of mental illness playing out today in Governor Gavin Newsom's plan to implement what he has dubbed care courts, through which the state can deem someone's mental health conditions or substance abuse issues so severe they can be ordered into forced care, otherwise known as conservatorship. The answer to mental health crisis is never incarceration. Just look at what happens to our brethren and our sistren and our humans that get sent to Santa Rita, the most violent jail in the country, with upwards of 70 deaths inside since 2014. Care courts will continue the trend of overdiagnosing and misdiagnosing black people with severe mental health issues. Then it will fail to address the root cause of those mental health issues, and it will continue the failed war on drugs and result in ongoing and violent incarceration and deaths of our folks. What should also be noted, right, and it is not a coincidence, that care courts has been introduced at a time when we have an exploding unhoused populations that mayors across the country, hey, Libby Schaff,
And Jesse Arreguin.
and London Breed, where our unhoused communities are exploding and white, wealthy, richer folks, mostly gentrifiers, don't want to see the consequences of their gentrification, and they have ordered the people that they put in office to deal with it. Care courts will allow them to deal with that problem. Care courts is easier than building permanent, low-cost, no-cost housing with wraparound services that would allow our most vulnerable populations to stabilize, rebuild their lives. And so instead, what we are seeing and what we will see, should we not be able to beat back care courts, and we are trying to beat it back. If you're interested, hit us up at APTP. It will be massive sweeps and forced incarceration that disappear our unhoused neighbors from sight.
This is a picture of me and my dad, Bradley. And I included this picture, because like Kat's father, my dad is also a Vietnam vet, and he was in Vietnam as a very young man. And I've included this picture because as I've grown up, I've learned about a whole lot of shit my dad had to go through. And as I've grown up, I've also learned a whole lot about what it means to heal. And that it's never too late to start healing. In her book, The Mark of Slavery, Jennifer Barclay describes how enslaved people eked out third bodies for themselves as sites of adornment and healing, through dance, through art, through medicine, in the midst of crushing brutality. And through the Federal Writers Project slave narratives, we see that when enslaved people found that the white man's medicine was failing them, they found remedies through other slaves, other enslaved people. And some of these remedies they brought with them across the Atlantic, and some of these remedies they found on American soil. So healing justice is not a new concept. When we engage with healing justice, we're not creating something new, we are returning to our roots. We are returning to the plants, we are returning to the soil, and we are returning to our ancestors. We have always been and will always be our best caretakers.
I want to acknowledge some pioneers of the work. Of course, Kara Page, Mimi Kim, APTP's own Guadalupe Chavez. I want to recognize that Mama Ayana Mashama is in the house, who's been pioneering this work and healing our communities for decades. I told you when we started this, right, interested in how we win. What are the solutions? So how do we move from theory to practice? We started with my father, and I want to tell you how that story is playing out now. My father, on his own, well, first he got diagnosed with kidney failure. Then he had to start going to dialysis 3 days a week. And I thought that that was going to kill him. I literally was preparing for the phone call that my father had killed himself, that he had given up. He was 400 pounds at this point, still dealing with a severe PTSD. What did Max say? Black people are magical. And when I tell you that my daddy has lost over 200 pounds, that he started on his own to practice Qigong and meditate and work out every single day. And not too long ago, I got the first apology for anything from him in almost 50 years because he recognized he wasn't present when I reached out to him for something, that he had continued old behavior. Transformation is possible. My daddy is 75 years old, y'all. The last time I went to see my daddy, which was just about maybe not even that, a month ago, we were sitting there watching TV, and I realized, I'm an empath, and I realized something felt different. That undercurrent of homicidal rage was gone. Yeah, give it up for my daddy. From theory to practice, we have programs like Mental Health First of the Anti-Police Terror Project in Oakland and Sacramento. We are the only non-911 or non-911 adjacent response to community crisis like mental health, substance abuse, and intimate partner violence. Yeah, you can give it up for the APTP volunteers too, because they are the fuel, the engine. they've trained upwards of 1,000 volunteers, received hundreds of phone calls, and have effectively mitigated community crisis, decreased emergency room visits, 911 calls, and act as advocates for folks that do need longer-term care that have to go into what we refer to as the medical industrial complex. But the most important thing is that we can qualitatively and quantitatively say that we have reduced harm to our most vulnerable and marginalized community members. The Anti-Police Terror Project has also launched the California Healers Network, which we've got 3 of our amazing healers. Shout out to Gabby, shout out to Refillway, shout out to our healers. The network has 75 healers across the state, supporting families, organizers, organizations, culture workers, and others in processing and releasing trauma so they may live more full, healthy lives and have the resources and reserves to build the world we all deserve to live in. The network brings together healers with experience implementing the healing justice framework to create infrastructure for community care and interdependence. And then we've got folks like Daniela Cantarova, who's been with us since the beginning, that then works with those families, right, to help them design organizing strategies that are rooted in self-determination. These aren't just programs. This isn't just transactional stuff, right? These are organizing strategies with the intention that engaging in this frees up our people to more joyfully and fully fight for their liberation. I'm gonna let our manager of healing justice, Guadalupe Chavez, a pioneer of this work, sum it up for us.
Healing justice is an opportunity to center healing in all of our movement work. Healing justice is a cry out for help for our peoples, for ourselves doing the work. Healing justice interrupts state violence in a way that nothing else does. So we have many different organizing strategies, and healing justice is one of them, and it's as important as any other organizing strategy. Healing justice leads us towards abolition, and it interrupts the binaries of, good citizen, bad citizen, good immigrant, bad immigrant, who's a criminal, who's not, right? It really interrupts those binaries within ourselves that we have internalized, right? And in which we're judging ourselves and judging other people. Healing justice causes us to pause and say, hey, what do I want for my people? What do I want for myself? And that's why I really believe in the healing justice healing portals, right? I say healing justice is life or death for us at this point. One, from my own personal life, my own experience at this moment. The amount of grief that I'm carrying, it is hard to get up every day. And that's not even my style. I'm actually a really joyful person. But the fact that the hurts that our peoples are feeling, the traumas that our people are feeling, and the collective grief that we're feeling, it needs to be interrupted. It needs to be interrupted with joy, with community care, with love, with spaces of pause, with spaces of deep tissue massage, with spaces of real conversations about what's really happening for ourselves on the inside. Because all of what's happening for us on the inside is impacting how we organize, how we relationship build. So to me, that's why healing justice is urgent. We need to shift how we build relationships with one another. Otherwise, our people feel used, our organizers burn out. That's not what we're trying to do, right? Healing justice is saying, hey, we got to do it different. And it is possible to do it different. American white supremacy creates trauma in our bodies from the womb to the grave. Is definitely very specific to the US, I would say. I would say that, okay, I'm gonna fumble a little bit until I get there. Actually, I really like this question, Kat. One of the greatest lies of white supremacy and capitalism, but white supremacy specifically, is that we're disconnected from the earth. And we are not of the earth, from the earth, and we are not the earth itself, herself, themselves. And actually, as brown, black, indigenous folks, we know to have a connection to the earth. We know to go to the plants when we're struggling with our ailments of stomach aches and grief and colds. We know to connect to the earth, to the wind, to the elements. And I would say that that's one of the ways that we specifically work healing justice at APTP, is bringing people back to what is most indigenous to ourselves. And that's what white supremacy, especially in America, does not want us to know and to feel into and to be empowered by, right? Is that deep connection to each other and to the earth. If we were, as BIPOC folks, if we were to sit with the bigness, the grandiose impact of the trauma that we live with, if we were to sit with that, it would be detrimental to our spirit, first of all, our bodies, our hearts, our minds. I do believe that many of us sit with that impact, and hence the symptoms of addiction and depression and other emotional, mental health and spiritual health issues, challenges that we deal with as a people.
And so if we're sitting through all of that and we're navigating the things we have to navigate just to survive, that consumes a lot of energy, yeah? Repression consumes a lot of energy. You're not gonna be able to answer this back in the question, I'm just giving context, right? Like, living in cognitive dissonance. Like, I feel like we wake up every day and our existence in this country is being gaslit and having to go along with the gaslighting that we know is happening. Otherwise, we can't pay our rent. Otherwise, we can't have a roof over our head. Otherwise, we can't feed our bellies or take care of our kids because we're stuck inside them. Like, that's the agreement. You let us gaslight you and we'll let you eat. Maybe. Don't test us, nigga. Right? And so it's gotta come out. The trauma has to, it has to come out. Where do you see the explosion of the impacts of that trauma in our communities? Why are Black people, why are they killing other Black people?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Violence is a trauma explosion.
Right.
And you just talked about internalized hatred. So my external explosion, it makes sense that I'm going to perpetrate violence against that being that looks like me.
That's exactly it. Yeah, we end up exploding on each other. And as you shared with me many years ago, all violence is state violence, right? So when we're talking about police violence or carceral violence, or community violence, right? It's all the same stuff, Our communities are beyond up to here, they're at the point of not being able to breathe because of the traumas that they're living with, that we are living with. And so, yeah, I'm gonna turn to my partner, the person closest to me, and all that internalized sadness and trauma and hate I'm going to just mirror it back, right back to my partner, to my kids. It's like a never-ending cycle. We can't escape the trauma. We can't escape the racism, the homophobia. There's just no way. And you're right. We have to take it out. We have to externalize it. And you tell me, hey, you know, take a yoga class for your anger. What? What are you talking about? Take a yoga class? No, what's easier, what's more accessible to me is my voice, using it, right? Sharing my anger, showing my anger. I'm not, you know, it's frankly BS to be like individual care or self-care. I don't think so. Not when we're dealing with the amount of trauma and grief. I have to keep coming back to that grief because it's something I deal with on a daily, whether it's with the families we work with, the communities we work with, right there on that block, right? The amount of grief that I see, and I see it in the addictions, whether it's food, whether it's tobacco, Coca-Cola, right? It's the ways that we harm ourselves. You're not going to take my ability to connect to my loved ones. You're not going to take my ability to connect to my neighbors. That's what white supremacy wants us to do, right? Brown against black, black against brown, black against black. No. Healing justice is saying stop. No. No more. You're not going to take my people. Not anymore.
Which means we have to organize. And to the point that you made earlier, that my time in this collaboratory, and I think like I said before we came on camera, you changed my life. I think for the rest of my life, this work around addressing the trauma of our folks, and for me through an abolitionist lens as an organizer, right? Because at the end of the day, that is who I am. And you mentioned it at the top, but I would love it if you would just take a little bit more time and talk about what healing justice as an organizing practice looks like in practice.
Healing justice as an organizing strategy and as a practice. I think one of the first things that comes up for me, you know, when I got introduced to healing justice, it kind of flipped my world upside down as an organizer. I had to rethink, rework, refeel how I was gonna connect to long-term vision. Right? So as organizers, we're often thinking about what's the long-term vision? Where are we trying to get to? Right? And what are the strategies that are gonna get us there? Right? So what are the advocacy efforts? What are the policy efforts? How do we, what meetings we have to have? It becomes very heady at some points, right? It's like, there's a lot of things you got to do. There's a train, and we're on it, and we're moving. And healing justice comes in, and it's like, hey, that's great and all of that is needed, yes. And how you go about each one of those things needs to shift just a little bit. And for some of us, it needs to shift a lot, right? We are burning out our organizers. We are burning out ourselves, our young people, right? The young people that look to us for hope. I feel like I've seen healing justice work very well with young people. You know, you bring in something different. You either bring in the aromatherapy oils and you start talking about life. You start talking about the nana that raised them, right? And, I want to make something for my nana. Oh, okay, who's your nana? And then we get into the struggle. But we get into it a different way. In some ways, it's like a little bit smoother to get into the conversations, you know? It's not that the rage doesn't come up, because it does. It's not that the grief doesn't come up, because it does. But if you have a tea blend that's specific for the nervous system, you know, you're talking about that. You're talking about how these plantitas, how these plants are impacting your bodies, how they can help your family. You're still talking about your loved one that got killed by the state. You're still talking about their memories, but you're also talking about it in community, with the plants, with the earth, with the elements. And this brings a different element of relief in some ways. And I see that, when we bring in healing justice strategies, so I've mentioned a few, the healing justice portal, and what that really is, it's not a community clinic, okay? So let's get this right. For APTP, a healing portal is an interruption to state violence. It's strategic. It's not a one-time community clinic where folks heal together. That's needed and that's great. And I love that I see that more and more in Open and Beyond. What makes it a healing justice strategy is that it's connected to our organizing efforts. That is, it is an organizing effort, right? And so we just had a healing portal this past weekend, and I saw how the families, our impacted families group, were able to, for a moment, right? It's a pause, it's an interruption. For a moment, step outside of the grief, honor their loved one in a different way by honoring themselves. By saying, oh, how I take care of myself is important. My loved one that is an ancestor now, they want me to take care of myself. That's part of the lucha. That is part of the struggle. How we care for ourselves is part of the struggle. How we love each other. That's one of the healers this past weekend, said, we're really good at a lot of the different organizing strategies, the policy, the advocacy, the door knocking. Now we need to really focus on how we care for one another, how we build each other up, right? And that's complete antithesis to white supremacy and capitalism, right? Because the powers that be don't want us to be connecting, to be healing, to be loving on one another. They prefer that we hate on one another. That's how they win.
That is the manager of Healing Justice at APTP, Guadalupe Chavez. So we're figuring it out at APTP. I mean, everything that we do, from how we start and end our meetings to how we deal with issues and accountability, right? Accountability through an abolitionist lens, we're trying to figure it out. This is the core tenet of all of our work. We've got like 3 minutes, which means one question, probably. But we're going to stay in the lobby. Both the healers and Alecia and I are going to stay in the lobby as long as you all are interested in us being there. So, no questions?
I have a question. I work for the Black Infant Health Project. You guys can look up deliverbirthjustice.org. It goes to show that trauma is passed down genetically. It shows in the birth rates for African American women. And I wanted to know, how do I, as a county program, implement some of the healing practices as I'm taking sickness off because of the birthed out feeling, and maybe how to do it with people who may not also believe in it as well.
Well, first I say, hit up APTP and let us get you some healing, please, through the network. And then the second thing that I would say, right, is like, don't go for the real big stuff right away, right? You ease into there. But things like, it's the same thing that we do with some of our families, right? Because another piece of this work is normalizing having conversations about mental health, normalizing having conversations about stopping and addressing your trauma. Where I always start with families is breath. That is a healing justice practice, right? Having them put their feet on the floor. That is a transformational practice. When you stop and put your feet on the floor and you feel the ground and the earth supporting you and you breathe, that's where I'll always start. And then meditation, and then prayer. Prayer is a healing justice practice, because the other thing is, organizing one-on-one, healing justice one-on-one, we got to meet the people where the people are, not where we want them to be. So what are they already doing? What can they already access in their community and in their lives? All of us can access breath.
And with that, I think that we should do one last breath together before we head to the lobby. And like Kat said, we will be in the lobby. We can answer questions. Our healing justice practitioners will be available to us for another 30 minutes. Thank you guys all for being here.
Thank you so much.
For staying.
Thank you.
Thank you to our interpreter.
Tiana, Professor Rayford.
Thank you to Professor Rayford.
Tiana, Barbara Montano, Abby, Cedric O'Bannon, who did the videos. Thank you. Thank you for this space. Thank you so much.
So everybody.
Oh, thank you.
So let's all take one last breath. Feel your feet on the floor. Center yourself a little bit. I'm gonna shake it off. That was a lot. I'm gonna shake it off. All right, everyone. And breathe in. And out. Breathe in. And out. And one last time. Breathe in and out. Thank you all very much.